the candidates, assess them, see what are their skills and abilities, how committed is this person for this job. So once a person completes this, a person with mental illness completes a sort of 2 months at a regular daycare center, then we'll know, okay, this person is little consistent in his work, so then we can start looking for a opening for him. And this is what we do is, this is for people with men, women, with any type of disability, immaterial of their education, qualification, anything. We assess what is his capabilities and we find a right match for this person. And most of our candidates start with a salary of about 2 to 3,000 rupees. And we also have candidates with MCA and they get more than 10,000. So depending on their capabilities and depending on their interest, we find a match for the candidates.
First thing is that, we're not asking them for a job straight away. We are asking for the 1 month work experience, which, makes it more open because they are not going to be obliged to give a job or they're not obliged to pay a salary. So they are giving them a work experience at the end of it. But it also gives the candidate a chance to showcase his potential in that sense. So that's what the step 1, as in the first step, and the 1 month that we're talking about.
The yardsticks which you have for physical disabled, you can't apply the same yardsticks for persons with mental disability, because this consistency which you are talking, it may not be there. In most of the cases it will not be there, but still they have to be helped and they have to be given this.
Yeah, in fact, we spoke about this to, at the OP also to some of the volunteers over there and some of the people who are in the group. And one of the things that what Vaishnavi was talking about in terms of that pool of people is something that could be worked out for lower end jobs in terms of, tying up with the organization, saying that in case, somebody is not able to come beyond the 3 months, you'll find another person to, replace in that pool kind of a system. Might work, it has to be tuned according to that thing that way.
Model has been tried in the USA and many other countries and it is quite successful. If the person with the mental illness is not going, then somebody else is substituted. The staff member goes. Suppose he is not going, you will go, and so that employer is not affected in it.
No, as much as we prepare the candidates, we also prepare the employer to some extent. Okay, this is once we took a visually impaired person, nobody knew how to interact with him. So it is sort of sensitizing process.
Do your employers pay an equal wage for the same kind of work, even if they're for the people who are disabled also, and if they take them on a permanent job, do you know if they would pay them the same wage, or do they say that productivity might be lower, so we will pay a less wage?
No, they start off with the same pay. The low end pay. So more or less, even if a sort of helper comes to join them, they are paid equally, and they are not discriminated on the. And what we do is we give them an assessment form. And what we want the employer to do is, end of the month, you make an objective assessment of the candidate. We give them certain criteria depending on his punctuality, regularity. So it is not based on sympathy that the person is going to get employed. He objectively assesses the person, and we do it thrice. The very first day, middle of the month, and at the end of the month we do, so that we see a change in the attitude towards the employing people. These are companies which have been saying no to people with disabilities. But as the person, see, what they look is not whether the person has a ready-made skill. What they look is the person serious about. Can I train him on something? Will the person continue with me? If he is convinced on that, then it's by the middle of the month, depending on his assessment, the rating they give on the scale, we know that, okay, more or less he is going to get absorbed. So we facilitate an objective assessment of the candidate.
What about, I think Prabhash Sridevan was mentioning something about a judgment in the US, where they said that only a positive law would be needed to enforce an organization to adjust, to make a reasonable adjustment for a person with disability, whether it's education or job or whatnot. So what about, have there been any structural changes in the organization which have taken in disabled people, and if so, who has borne those costs?
See, these are open employment. None of these companies are bound by the PWD Act. Okay. So, two of these companies did not have a policy. They said, their HR policy was no to people with disabilities. Now, after specifically their policy was no for people with disabilities. Now, after these people have gone in, they have amended their policy.
Okay.
So,
How about stuff like, let's say, a ramp needs to be, created for, let's say, a person with polio. In that case, if there's some kind of investment that the company needs to make, have
Okay.
you found them willing, unwilling? Do you normally share the costs?
Okay. See, now we are looking for a safe entry. So we choose companies where there is minimum adjustments that is required. The moment when you step to a company and say, okay, right now you build a ramp, only then my candidate is going to come and straight away is going to say no. So we'll taken a very soft approach. You keep this person for 1 month. End of the month, you decide whether to have him or not. So what we are trying to facilitate is a relationship between the supervisor and the candidate. Where during the group work session, we tell them, okay, how to begin a soft talk with them, how to chat with these people. So what is happening is there are a lot of non-work related interaction that happens. So they have friendly relationship. So that is what is going to decide end of the month whether to have this person or not. So we look for safe entry. So straight away we don't tell them, okay, you better install JAWS software for this person, you better provide the RAM for this person, only then. So straight away he's going to say no, because he is not obliged by any law.
Yeah.
Once that step 1 process is through, then we can start bringing in more and more facilities. Now what they use is even the JAWS software, it's freely downloadable. Once in 45 minutes they have to restart the system. So we don't go with any demands like you better do this, and we don't do any of those sorts.
Of the 46 people,
49.
how many people have been able to find it? 37, is it?
37 have been absorbed in the end of the month.
What is the disability profile of 37 people?
See, about 80% of them have visual impairment.
So your
Majority have visual impairment. But this program is open for anyone with disabilities.
We also have
have you
candidates
tried
that
with
are-
MC people?
No, we have not had a suitable candidate.
See, we've basically been writing to
Different organizations.
Because we don't charge the employer or the candidate anything on this. So we've been basically writing to organizations, asking them to, refer candidates whom they would like to, be a part of step 1 in that
How does
sense.
any disabled person network with you?
See, one, we write to different organizations about this program. The other source of referral is the candidates themselves. See, most of them stay in hostels. So one person gets absorbed, he will go tell his word of mouth spreads, and they start bringing in their candidates. And there is no criteria as such for getting thing. The only thing we have is, at that point, the person should not have any job. We don't work like a regular placement consultancy. Okay, now I'm getting X money, I get registered, so they'll help me to find X plus amounts. We don't work like that. We look for candidates who, because of their disability, nobody is giving them an opportunity. They have tried and nobody is giving them an opportunity. We handpick those candidates and we try to support them.
Do you have a training kind of module for employers?
See, what we do is it's the initial orientation that we give for the employee. There's no training as such.
No, but I mean, a lot of the queries and a lot of the hesitation would be common, right? Whether I'm a generator company or
Yeah,
I'm
it
a
is one-to-one with the company.
See, some of the things that we do is, one is video. In a manufacturing setup, what is the type of work that they can do? And the other thing that we can do is we can take them through a guided tour. I can take the company person where the candidates have been placed so that they can see them see the type of work that they have been doing. The other thing that we do is during these group work meetings, the companies directly come and interact with the candidates. So they know what to expect from them, and then they can prepare themselves for the.
There are no issues from the non-disabled employees with disabled employees as in they get special treatment or anything.
No.
They're not getting special treatment.
They're not, because
See, the objective, the end of the month, we want the decision to be objectively based.
Yeah, but what about the dynamics of the organization? I mean, like, we've had situations in which a person needed to take 1 day off in a week. This was the situation demanded it. Then fine, once you agree to that, then you have a whole bunch of other people saying, even I want to take less on X problem, etc. So that's bound to happen, right? I mean,
No, I think we tell the candidates, first of all, when we find the candidates, because we find them that they cannot just take off like that or expect those kind of allowances just because of their disability. So it is trying to the candidate and you're going to be objectively assessed, and therefore you have to follow whatever the other employees are following in terms of regularity, punctuality. You're going to be assessed based on that. So even your future thing, whatever prospects are going to be based on that.
See, end of the month, the interview what the employer has with the candidate, we stay out of it. Now, our program is only for till for the 1 month. End of the month, the candidate directly speaks to the employer and he negotiates the salary. We only provide external support. So there, if he wants to take leave or his other things or not, he has to directly negotiate with the employer in terms of leave and other facilities. We only provide external support for the candidates.
have any of them skipped jobs?
Yeah,
Yes, that has happened. That has happened.
That's good.
they move to something.
I mean, they say that they're very desperate for job. You arrange for an interview. End of the, you go there for interview. Only you're there. The manager is there. The candidate is
You are saying
not.
jobs are skipped jobs.
No. Sorry. What I meant is that
They
they
move.
joined one company
And they moved to better
and they moved to
Yeah,
another job.
yeah.
I mean, we have had experiences. Then what? See, all these things we negotiate during the group work meetings.
That's why they keep coming back for the group.
Then what the group has decided is let the person come for 4 consecutive meetings. Then we know whether this person serious is about job. Then we start looking jobs for him.
No,
If we have to go forward, we will have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Special, Palm is special, Vandana is special, and all of you are very, very special. So thank you. Lakshmi, thank you very much. We've heard a lot about employment. We've heard about, we have heard a lot about mental health. We've heard a lot about rehabilitation. What we have not really heard about is empowerment, and what we have not heard is about the market. My entry point into this discussion is that we are using our product as a peg to empowerment and to employment or enterprise. And the second entry point is that it's an offshoot, it's a very important pillar of advocacy program that we run. So every product that we produce has a story to tell. That is our byline. And the constituency that I work with are abandoned people in state mental health facilities who have been living there for more than 5 years, 5 to 10 years. So they are the people we work with. We do not do any assessment, we do not do any rating, we do not do any psychological assessment. We have found that we have 3 areas to work on with the constituency that we work with. One is motivation, the other is how to interact and how to communicate, and third is how to identify and how to understand the market. Because ultimately you have to survive in the cruel, harsh world, and you need certain tactics, and you need to understand what is expected and how you can then negotiate with the market. So we spend a lot of our energies in doing rigorous market survey of the things that are available, where you can add value, and how you can also change the nature of the demand of the market to suit your needs or your constituency. On one hand, for people who have been dislodged from their services in the government sector, we work a lot with the local union of that organization. For example, if a person has been dislodged from the job because of mental illness in Geological Survey of India, Calcutta, we work a lot with the unions, and they are the ones who are the ambassadors of that person, and that person has got back his or her job. As far as the other employers, potential employers are concerned, we do a lot of training with them instead of working with the inmates. because we all know that however much you do the inputs with the inmates, there would always be a certain amount of residual problems. And the constituency that we work with has one unique thing, because the state mental health hospitals in West Bengal, we still use very orthodox medication. So while the positive symptoms go away, the negative symptoms do not. So we have to work very, very hard with listlessness, with lack of energy, with lack of motivation, with inertness. So that's one area we really have to work, and we also feel very inert in the process, and we are also listless. So it's a very two-way process. It's not that we have huge amount of energy and we always feel motivated to do what we want to do. I will not go into the values of work and how it is linked with employability, how it is linked with well-being, because all that has been said, and I really appreciate the work of Hand in Hand and One Step. I think I'm taking back a lot from One Step, and I will use some of the strategies back there. We will talk about a little bit about our partnership and our products. पीछे आप आगे जाइए, आगे आगे, बहुत आगे, products में आ जाइए. Yeah. So you can see the products that we are making. We have about 25 kinds of products that these people produce, right from plants to fabrics to gift wraps to cards to whatever, different kinds of bags, stationery and notebook. This is our niche area. So the whole purpose is to create a demand for that product, and how do you then customize those products for each of the, yeah, lovely. Here is something, yeah. Sold. Dr. Serene, our friend Alok, has bought this scarf. And of course, Dr. Jain. So why did you buy this product? And what else? It is lovely. But what do you mean by lovely? It's extremely well made, it's extremely beautiful, so it can compete with the mainstream market. We do not say that we are NGOs and we will only outlet from special NGO spaces. We actually compete with the mainstream market, and we have to invade spaces like Shoppers Stop, we have to invade spaces like Lifestyle Store in Chennai, and we have to invade spaces like Pantaloons, which are all over the country. That's the way we can do advocacy, and that's the way we can generate employment and financial well-being for persons with mental illness. The other thing is, how do we then do secure partnership? We have secured major national and international partnership. Many of our products are exported outside, especially our paper products. And when we go with the product, we do not talk about people with mental illness. We just throw the product and we say whether you like it or not. When they say they like it, then we go back and talk about the history of the organization, and I see a lot of excitement. Then the designers themselves, or the enterprises buyers themselves, suggest that, can you do this? Can you change it? Can you tweak it? Can you do this for us? Can you add a little bit of edging here? And of course we are there to oblige, because any other enterprise or any other company would do that. So we change the edging and we secure partnership. And there should be a vision matching. We do a lot of partnership with fair trade organization like Sasha. You must have heard about Sasha. Sasha is a fair trade organization which works with artisans community all over India. And we also, next slide. Next. Yeah. And we also retail out from places, high-end places like Bairoom, You can see the products there. And Byloom has set a target for their salespeople that you have to sell 30 cards every day. So we have a huge guaranteed market for us, which then motivates us. That's a beautiful song playing, which kind of dances with my what I'm speaking. So that's nice. So Byloom. So what these people. So these are the list of good people that we have, and there are some bad people as well, but we'll not talk about them. Next slide. Yeah. So this two quotes from our partner. One is based in Geneva. Shioban, she's from a fair trade shop called Fair. What she has to say. The beautiful block print paper from Anjali is always popular with our customers. We love the way it looks, but more importantly, love the contribution sales make to this wonderful project, which works on reforms needed to improve the treatment of people with mental illness in the Indian health system. Then we have another person from Sasha, another fair trade organization based in Calcutta. Sasha's partnership with Anjali for 4 years has fostered growth and learning for both the organization. Anjali's beautiful products have impressed some of Sasha's clients across borders. Sasha would like to support Anjali for the cause it works for. So basically a couple of things. One is that your product should be absolutely fantastic in quality to compete with the mainstream market and not rely on the NGO kind of spaces. Number two is very important how you screen out the partners as buyers for your products. Number three is how do you then work with your human resource. You have a large pool of human resource of people with mental illness. How do you then work with them to work in an enterprise? Manage money, manage the setup, time, etc., etc. So that's something we are working on, and we are getting people to train them. And we are also trying to look at a business model which can sustain Anjali as an organization. But this is not our mainstay of work. Our mainstay of work is advocacy, and through these products we talk about equal opportunity. The last slide. Skip. Yeah. 5 reasons. 5 reasons to buy an Anjali product. Where is Dr. Sareen gone? Because it's a great buy. These are some of the reasons that we use for generating income. Because it's a great buy, because every product has a story to tell, and we take immense lot of pain to tell that story. Because buying it enhances the self-worth, which has been talked about whole of this morning. Because you become a part of a great initiative like Banyan. Because if all these reasons work for you, then you have helped us demonstrate the benefit of linking it with equal opportunity and justice for persons with psychosocial disability. And while we talk about training of the employees, we must also remember that there is a right to reasonable accommodation. Thank you. It's at every point. And one of the things I'm sharing, but this is a trade secret, it's not to be out of this room, is that don't burden your patients with everything. If they are producing fantastic artwork, stick to that and try and get the partners to buy that artwork. Don't try and replicate it on anything else, because that's not your forte. For example, we are now selling this artwork to a very, very well-known designer for his shoes.
I work at the center largely from, say, a livelihood perspective. I'm a psychiatrist. That's the day job, apart from all this stuff. So, can I just have the next slide, please? I just took a couple of quotes, what kind of got me going, and I suggest there's a couple of books that you might want to have a look at. The first one is from Richard Warner, who has written about recovery from schizophrenia in the political economy, and how the broader outside political economy actually affects what happens to people with mental illness getting work and employment. And the second quote is from a book called Poor Economics by Abhijit Banerjee, which is interesting because of the, actually a kind of counterintuitive suggestion there, which is that people who are poor do not necessarily want to become entrepreneurs. They really want a stable job. So, yes, that's what. Sorry? Yes. You agree? Yeah. And that they want stable jobs and not necessarily want to run their own businesses. And the whole push toward making them run businesses is not necessarily what they want to do. So can I do it? Oh, you can't. Okay. Okay. Okay, there are 2 or 3 models that I looked at largely from the policy perspective. Obviously, you heard about sheltered employment, and there are many people doing sheltered employment. And then there is the individual placement and support. You heard from in the morning and in the afternoon a lot about train and place and train. So these are models which actually do exist. And I really wanted to get talking about what are called social cooperatives and social firms. Because that's something where I think policy and legal impact, and given our environment, might be a place for us to work at. So I'll just run through quickly what is a social cooperative. See, this whole movement started off in Italy, and what is a social cooperative? Basically, Italy has a pretty good law for cooperatives to develop, and the similarities with India. If you worked in India, you realize that we have a very similar kind of policy and legal framework for cooperatives. What the Italians actually did, which is really interesting, was they created a category called B cooperatives. If I can have the next slide, please. And what B cooperatives are is they have at least 30% of members who should be disadvantaged in some way. And what they have defined disadvantage is largely people with disabilities. And so type B cooperatives actually get very special preferences, and I'll come back to what those special preferences are. Can I have the next slide, please? And if you look at type B cooperatives in Italy, the largest proportion of people who are disadvantaged members in these cooperatives are people with mental health problems. Almost 41% of their members tend to be that. And what do these cooperatives follow a principle of? That they actually remain small, intentionally remain small. They don't try to become big. The idea is to maintain your social ties within the organization, because then you know everyone else in the organization. The other thing is that there is a high degree of participation. So people who run are members of the cooperative actually run the cooperative. In a sense, they are owners of the thing. They are not workers in a place which is owned by someone else. And I thought that territoriality was a very useful thing. They only